So my name is Jesus Nunez. As Matt said, um, in my daily life, I work with Bechtel as a senior structural engineer. Right now, I'm working in the UPF project in Knoxville, Tennessee. It's a Y12 facility. But like I told Matt, I'm moving back to DC area on August. I will be working on the Bill Gates SMR. Like people knows it, that that's the Natron job. So I will be working with Bechtel designing the facilities of that project. So it will be pretty interesting because I will have knowledge of what's going on with the new SMR regulations and all that. And I can share it with people and continue educating people about it. Like I said, my name is Jesus Nunez, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Nuclear Alternative Project. Um, and I will be presenting an overview of our nonprofit organization to you today and what I call and my team as at the path of to make a strong and modern Puerto Rico with advanced nuclear reactors. And I just want to thank Matt and Eric and the entire Atomic Ambassador group to just be present in this meeting and giving us the opportunity to present to you. Um, the presentation will focus on the following: who we are, our work. We did a first feasibility study, um, results of that feasibility study, the current and future projects that we're working on, and main concerns from Puerto Ricans that may be different from where you live because Puerto Rico is an island. And then some concluding remarks. Who is NAP? NAP is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we are composed of reactor operators, engineers, consultants, and other professionals, all working in the U.S. nuclear industry. Our mission to study the alternative of advanced reactors for Puerto Rico and any other resource-limited countries by educating communities and their governments about the technological advances. And the approach we are following is, even though Puerto Rico doesn't have any project right now of a nuclear reactor, we want to start a conversation about nuclear by doing a strong community engagement, and we are educating the communities about these advanced nuclear reactors, and then trusting that in this transparent way it will result in an acceptance of a future advanced nuclear reactor project. This slide shows NAP board of directors. But I mean, I already present myself, but Valerie Lugo is the Chief Operations Officer. She has 17 years entrepreneur and HR operations. She is kind of the non-nuclear person in our group, and she has a good feedback when we go too technical into topics. She gave us she raised her hand and say, "Hey, I mean, you need to put it down because nobody will understand what you're saying." So that's probably one of the best assets that we have on Valerie is on top of what she does in the organization. Ramon Martinez, the Chief Nuclear Officer, he works in INPO as a director, and Angel Reyes, the Chief Technology Officer, and he works with Exelon as an SRO STA. I think recently he got promoted to a project manager, if I remember, and he will be starting his position also in August. So, well, I want to say that also, like the work we do in NAP is voluntary. I guess personally and my group, we believe that this work can provide the community and the leaders in Puerto Rico with all the necessary information to make an informed decision about this technology in Puerto Rico in the future. NAP is composed also of volunteers and an advisory board. They just give their time and expertise to our organization, and they're an important part of NAP structure. They are engineers or other professionals that has various experience in the U.S. nuclear industry, or even people that are outside the nuclear industry. They volunteer and ask us for help for giving help of what we're doing. The advisory board, they provide the direction and recommend action plans to our leaders, and they're formed by a group of engineers and other professionals with intensive knowledge of the U.S. nuclear industry. As a matter of fact, we have two of our advisors. They actually were part of the nuclear program in Puerto Rico in the 60s. So they were part of that nuclear program that used to exist in Puerto Rico that now doesn't exist, and we're trying to bring back with the collaborating with the ANS chapter in Puerto Rico in the university. What we do in our organization, so like I said before, we bring engineers and professionals in the nuclear industry to study the market viability, safety, and environmental impact of these reactors in Puerto Rico. We center in the idea that as we do our work, we engage with and inform the community in Puerto Rico and the U.S. stakeholders through the process. And we believe that this sets the foundation for a future project development and any local skills development. This is kind of a flowchart showing our organization strategy. We engage with all the stakeholders shown in the flowchart to study and educate the option of advanced nuclear reactors for Puerto Rico. And we know that these actions will set foundations for the potential future project and local labor skills development. And I don't know, but some people probably in this call have worked with some people from Puerto Rico that, I mean, they work in nuclear industry, GE Hitachi, they work in the NRC and many other companies. And we know we have a big amount of born Puerto Ricans that have moved to the States and are working in the industry. What has happened in Puerto Rico? Why nuclear energy proposals have failed in Puerto Rico? The problem is that every time that nuclear energy is proposed, the public raises technical questions, and then there is a lack of experts to respond and resolve these questions. And then obviously there is always a group that is funded by either our friends in the solar industry or the gas industry, that they revolt and start, putting opposition to any possible project, and then the idea of nuclear is dropped by the politicians. So that's kind of the cycle that probably it happens everywhere, but in Puerto Rico is that's the way it is. Like I said before, nuclear energy has been proposed multiple times in Puerto Rico. In the 60s, we had a experimental super nuclear superheater power station. It used to be called Bonus. In the 70s, they actually selected a place to put a reactor in there, and they abandoned the idea for various reasons. One of them was financing and other political issues. And in the 90s, they were considering nuclear as an alternative to fossil fuel dependency. And in the 2011s, also the Senate of the state Senate, they did a feasibility study for nuclear, and in the 2017 they even discussed nuclear SMRs as a possible option after Hurricane Maria. And I mean, probably some of you have seen this chart, but this is from NEI. They did a public opinion tracking survey, and they found out that as if you are more informed about nuclear energy, typically you are more in favor of it. But in our organization, we believe that educating the community is the best option to have an possible advanced nuclear reactor project in Puerto Rico. And I can talk about my experience. I didn't have any knowledge of nuclear energy and the safety culture of it. And before joining Bechtel, and my first project was to support a nuclear operating plant in Georgia. And that experience changed completely my perception about nuclear energy after I educated myself through my job assignment. The feasibility study that we performed, if you would like to read it, is you can download a free copy from our website. It was funded by the Department of Energy. And then it touched these topics that are in this slide. We talk about the market conditions, technology assessment. Obviously, this was done 2000, finalized 2020. So some of the technologies that we are talking there, some of them have advanced into the what you will see in the report. And they have some technical changes, but it's a good study. You can read about all these technologies. We also have a public perception section, grid assessment, legal and regulatory framework. Puerto Rico has been part of U.S. as a territory. The NRC will be kind of the the the, the government the agency that will foresee the operation of the plant. Um, we have also the financing, ownership, and operation mechanism, and we also have a section of weighting the benefits and challenges for Puerto Rico if they accept nuclear. The study indicates that development of nuclear is in Puerto Rico is feasible of advanced nuclear, but we need some further studies to do that, to touch the technical challenges of seismicity and high population areas and things like that. Some key feasibility study conclusions. In Puerto Rico, you have a stable electricity demand, and that typically requires a steady base load, and that's less suitable for intermittent renewable sources. Only nuclear reactors can complement that intermittency with zero emission baseload generation. Even though right now Puerto Rico is just thinking to use natural gas as the base load for that. And then also Puerto Rico renewable portfolio standard requires around 100% renewables by 2050. That they're actually finding out that it's going to be a big challenge to do that, or even probably impossible. As part of our study, we kind of we hired a group of Puerto Ricans working in different industries in Puerto Rico, and they were our canvassers, and they kind of interview and ask some questions to these 3,000 residents of all these if you call it small towns in Puerto Rico, and of out of 100%, 94% of the residents were interested in continuing to explore this option of nuclear. I guess the number, everyone asked me why the number was too high, and you need to understand, like, this happened probably a year after Hurricane Maria, so they were pretty interested in listening and options and what could work for the island. Probably now it would be probably less, depending on the education you bring to the people, and typically because of recent earthquake events in the south area of the island. So people have been kind of a little more, if you call it, scared about the idea of nuclear because they don't understand how it would work with seismic. They also rated their top priorities for power generation as number one, impact to the health and environment. Number two, lower electricity bills. And number three, resistance to natural events. Also, advanced reactors can promote smaller and more distributed future generation plants. And as you know, the SMR install capacity range from 50 to 600, and microreactors 1 megawatt to 20. And there are some examples there that I know probably you have seen. Also, Puerto Rico, they are thinking about having some microgrids for emergency purposes, and that for a micro and SMR, it will probably be feasible to do that. Other conclusions were, given the recent hurricane and earthquake events in Puerto Rico, the need for enhancing the overall resiliency of the energy generating system is urgent. the future generation assets must meet the highest design standard after extreme natural events, and they have learned that from Hurricane Maria, unfortunately. And advanced nuclear reactor will contain these design safety features for earthquakes and hurricanes. And the ones that we evaluated, they are expected to envelop those parameters. Um, we actually we submitted a proposal to the US DOE FOA program, as Matt said. And what we're planning to do is we're planning to do a site suitability study of two areas in Puerto Rico, of two regions. And our proposal was selected by the DOE. We haven't started that project yet. We're still waiting for the DOE to give us the go ahead in that project. But I believe they will give us the go ahead probably in 1 or 2 months when the next fiscal year starts. I mean, that's kind of a guess from me, but um, and then we will obtain input from, there is a nonprofit organization called Indonesia that they are composed of pharmaceutical industry partners, and they will give us some information that we will use for our report. Also, we are currently developing webinars to educate people in Puerto Rico about advanced nuclear reactors. And these webinars can be seen around the world also, even US or the world. Typically, we are doing them in Spanish, well, in English. Some of them are in Spanish, but it next month or the end of this month, we're planning to do another webinar of how nuclear fits into a microgrid grid. And that you will receive, we will post that event soon when we receive all the information from the person that is going to give the webinar. Concerns from Puerto Ricans, I mean, maybe this is similar in other areas, is what is if there is an accident, do we need to leave the entire island? I mean, that's kind of typical question we get. What are we going to do with the spent nuclear fuel? Nuclear cannot be built in Puerto Rico because we have frequent events and earthquakes. Also, the high cost of nuclear projects have come to the table. And why is nuclear needed versus solar and wind? So those are kind of the typical questions we had. And as a concluding remarks, I personally and in our group, we believe that a strong community engagement in the conceptual phase of a potential project is essential, especially for countries or states that don't have any nuclear energy operating plants. The importance of public opinion is critical in Puerto Rico. Also, I have seen that happen in Colorado. They were trying to pass some legislation, and some people started opposing it from the public, and they stopped the idea of it. I hope they come back and educate the people about the project, and they can start doing that again. The communities need to be educated in a transparent way, about the benefits, but also the challenges of any potential nuclear energy project. And the technical or general questions from the community should be answered in a timely manner to avoid misinformation. I I completely know this because I got calls when for the unfortunate events of the war in Ukraine. They were, they were attacking. There were some fights in close to the nuclear plant inside the area, and they called me from Puerto Rico because people were scared. And yeah, I mean, I tried to explain about how the nuclear plants are designed and all that. Um, but if you leave that space to someone that is against nuclear, then obviously they will provide more misinformation or do like a scare kind of agenda. So people will be more scared about nuclear. And yeah, I mean, it will definitely change the perception about nuclear that we have today, that probably is more positive than negative. Local culture and politics are important variables to consider during this process. And And the energy is, I mean, some people think only about decarbonizing, but I think it's important also that we promote the energy resiliency and reliability of having nuclear in the grid as a system. Um, and this is important for Puerto Rico in terms of Puerto Rico has a heavy manufacturing and critical infrastructure. A big percentage of the GDP is based on this. It's around, I think, if I remember correctly, more than 20% of the GDP of Puerto Rico. Um, and it depends highly on that. It's even more than tourism. And countries and states should select an energy mix with optimize the cost of electricity, resilience, and reliability. And in this case, in Puerto Rico, that it should be scalable. Puerto Rico is only 100 miles by 40, so you don't have a lot of area to put solar panels. It will be a big challenge for them to reach 100% renewable energy if that's the plan. And as we always promote a fully integrated approach between community, industry, the government, and technologies is essential to bring any interest to a potential nuclear energy project. I know for sure that if you come with an idea of a renewable energy project to Puerto Rico, you don't get any opposition of it. You will probably get some opposition if you're trying to put it in a farmland, but typically it's easy going because they have done their job, in the communities, and I think that's part of the things that nuclear needs to be more active about is just giving funding to educational campaigns and organizations like NAP and others that I know exist, like Eric's Generation Atomic and others, to continue this education and getting more interest from the public into these projects. And as that, if you have any questions, let me know. And you can visit our website or social media. They are in there. I guess Matt probably can send you the link if you need it. Download our feasibility report and donate if you like in our website too. Thank you so much.
Hey, Carl. Yeah, so we'll open it up for some questions now. So if you do have anything, maybe it's easiest just to raise your hand so we know you got something, and then we can kind of stay organized on it. But yeah, Carl, go ahead.
Wonderful to see the work you've done. Do you have any contacts in political groups inside Puerto Rico, and what is your practice for reaching out to them and perhaps offering like the ability to do community Q&As?
We work with some politicians that we know they are open to the discussion of it. Um, Obviously, our organization we cannot lobby for nuclear because we are a nonprofit. That we cannot lobby for nuclear is part of our laws. So we can only offer like educational things to the politicians. Hey, we're doing this, just information to them. Right now, the political arena in Puerto Rico is kind of interesting because before Puerto Rico was divided in between people that are pro statehood, people that didn't care, that were in the middle, and then pro independence, that was a small percentage of people. And then the parties were based on that, right? Right now, that is changing because the problem is now Congress is giving them the hint that, hey, you have to decide between statehood or independence. So now the political parties will have to change to what we have typically in the US. In the US, that is more like a conservatism kind of political, like if you can say the Republican Party, right? To just a more like left central Democrat Party. So that political arena is changing. So is people have had conversation with the politicians, and I mean they're open to the idea, but they're not going to move until the public is educated and they they agree about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So quick follow up. You said that you're not allowed to lobby politicians for nuclear. Is that right?
Yeah.
And I want to point out that, well, if you're meeting with constituent groups, maybe that's different. And I want to compare this to the work of Rocky Mountain Institute and Food and Water Watch, who are intensely integrated with different political groups. And even though they don't speak directly to politicians, they do regularly reach out to political groups in order to bring forward their resolutions and the things that benefit them.
Yeah.
Hey, go ahead, Shirley.
Yeah, I just want to clarify something that Natrum is not an SMR. SMRs are usually under 300 megawatts. And welcome to the liquid metal reactors. Jesus, I'm looking forward to working with you soon. That's all. Thank you.
Are you working in that project, Shirley?
Yes, I've been doing that since 2019.
Okay,
Yes.
well, probably we'll have some conversations when.
We'll definitely will. It's actually 3:45 for Carl. All right, thanks.
No problem.
I wanted to ask is, you said you had 2 sites narrowed down, and I've looked at the geography of Puerto Rico a little bit myself recently.
Yeah.
Where are those sites? Are they on the coast? Are they inland or?
No, they're like north. There is one that is northeast, close to a naval base that used to be in Puerto Rico, Roosevelt Roads, that has some infrastructure already present. And there is one in the northwest part of the island. And those sites is, it's because of the infrastructure, the demand is in that area too. And also on top of that, the seismicity is less in those areas. So I don't want to say that we have like 2 sites selected because they're not sites, they're like areas, right? Like that's what people get confused when we talk about it, because they think that we already selected something to put a plant in there. But we are just studying the possibility of we're just going to study the areas, right? And then we were going to promote, to show the people, okay, this is the seismicity in these areas, this is where it's better to put a plant, something like that.
You may have mentioned this before, and sorry if I missed it, but is Puerto Rico subject to the same regulations as are they subject to NRC regulations, or they have their own?
Yeah, they are. They actually have nuclear materials in Puerto Rico, but not for a power plant. They do handle nuclear materials for the pharmaceutical industry. I think it's to how you call it, to sterilize materials in the pharmaceutical industry. I think they do. Well, they do because Jeff Merrifield, that he was an NRC commissioner, he told us that he used to visit Puerto Rico because of that. So they have nuclear materials, just that they don't know it. I mean, like typically, you don't go there to the TV. Hey, we have some nuclear materials here.
Cool. Anybody else have anything for Jesus?
Okay. You mentioned that Puerto Rico has a heavy manufacturing industry. So is there some part that will help in your supply chain if Puerto Rico decides to build small power plant, something?
Yeah, I mean, we have been in conversations with the pharmaceutical industry, and yeah, I mean, they're clear with us. They need power that is reliable and resilient. I mean, they don't mind if it's a microreactor that would cost them 25 cents per kilowatt hour. But if it's running constantly and they don't have to cut their lines of production, they already have that as a base, right? Compared to what they have now, that they don't know when the power will go down. So what they have done is some of these plants that they have big profits like Amgen and things like that. They actually build their cogeneration plant inside their fence. And when the power goes down, they have natural gas running with these cogeneration plants, and they don't see the electricity cut. But they don't really want to be running a nuclear plant in there. They want to be doing their pharmaceuticals only. But at this stage, they cannot do it. They need to do their own cogeneration so they don't lose their line of production. In terms of if Puerto Rico becomes a nuclear place, I think it will be beneficial to the area. They can bring some. They can even use help the U.S. to generate some of the materials that they will use in the nuclear plants here, and even work with people in South America. Since Puerto Rico, you have a big Spanish-speaking population, you can probably use Puerto Rico also as a promotion of U.S. industry nuclear projects in South America and Central America.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that because there's not a whole lot of south of the U.S. There's not a whole lot of nuclear activity, right? There's what Laguna Verde in Mexico, and then Argentina has a plant, and they're working on an SMR, the CARAM project, and Brazil has one. Am I missing any here? There's not a whole lot south of the U.S. border. It would be really awesome to see some of these countries explore.
And the thing is that the U.S. is getting beat up by China. So if you see the news right now, there are a lot of these countries that are being approached by China to start building that nuclear infrastructure. So I mean, Puerto Rico obviously could be a very good point to start those conversations, because obviously, you have, like I said, a Spanish-speaking population that, probably will engage better with those areas. And I mean, it's a big possibility.
Well, hey, thanks for coming on and doing this. And
No problem.